What is a sound? Not the experience of hearing, but the thing itself. It's a ripple of pressure, a physical disturbance moving through the air. When a speaker cone vibrates, it's not creating magic. It's methodically pushing molecules together and pulling them apart. This creates waves of high and low pressure that travel outwards like ripples in a pond. If you stand next to a large enough speaker, you don't just hear the bass, you feel it in your chest. That's not a metaphor. That is the boundary between hearing and feeling beginning to dissolve. This boundary is blurrier than you think because your ears are fundamentally organs of touch. A sound wave travels down your ear canal and physically strikes your eardrum, making it vibrate. These vibrations are transferred through 3 tiny bones, the smallest in your body, to a fluid-filled, snail-shaped structure called the cochlea. Inside, thousands of microscopic hair cells, called stereocilia, are bent back and forth by the fluid's movement. These cells aren't hearing, they are being physically touched by the wave, converting that mechanical push into the electrochemical signal your brain interprets as a birdsong or a word. If hearing is just a specialized form of touch, can other parts of your body learn the same trick? Your skin is covered in nerve endings sensitive to pressure and vibration. Think of the Pacinian corpuscles, which are exquisitely tuned to detect tiny textural changes and vibrations. What if you could feed the complex vibrations of human speech directly to them? Early experiments in the 20th century created devices that did just that, translating sounds into patterns of vibration on a person's skin. With practice, people could learn to differentiate words, even sentences, just by feeling them on their fingertips. This works because of a fundamental truth about your brain. It doesn't actually see, hear, or feel. It is locked in the silent, dark vault of your skull. All it ever experiences are electrochemical signals. It doesn't inherently care if a signal representing a straight line comes from the optic nerve or the nerves in your back. Neuroscientist Paul Bach-y-Rita famously demonstrated this with sensory substitution devices. He built a chair with a grid of 400 vibrating solenoids that poked a blind person's back. A camera captured an image, converted it to a low-resolution pattern, and drew it on their skin. After hours of training, a strange thing happened. The subjects stopped reporting feeling vibrations on their back and started reporting seeing. They could recognize objects, judge distances, and even catch a ball tossed towards them. Their brains had rewired. The part of the brain normally dedicated to processing information from the back was no longer the primary active area. Instead, fMRI scans showed that the visual cortex, the part of the brain that processes signals from the eyes, had taken over the job. It was now processing tactile data as if it were sight. The skin had become a retina. This interchangeability of the senses pushes us to think about sound not just as data to be interpreted, but as a physical force that can impose order on the world. Consider cymatics. When you vibrate a thin plate covered in sand, the sand doesn't just bounce randomly. It spontaneously organizes itself into beautiful, intricate geometric patterns known as Chladni figures. The pattern you see is not an artistic representation. It is a direct, physical map of the sound wave itself. The sand is pushed away from areas of intense vibration and settles in the quiet, still lines of the wave's nodes. You are literally seeing the architecture of a sound wave. This ability to create zones of stillness and zones of intense force can be harnessed. Using multiple ultrasonic transducers pointed at each other, scientists can create a standing wave in mid-air. This wave isn't traveling. It's a stable, invisible structure of high and low pressure points. These low-pressure nodes are pockets of calm, powerful enough to counteract gravity. If you place a small object inside one, it becomes trapped, held aloft by an invisible cage of sound. This is acoustic levitation. It allows engineers to manipulate tiny electronic components without touching them, or chemists to mix liquids without a container. The sound wave, something we perceive as ephemeral and intangible, becomes a physical hand, a force that can be precisely controlled to lift, move, and hold matter. It's a reminder that the world our senses build for us is just one interpretation. The underlying reality is one of physical forces and patterns, where a wave of compressed air can be both a whisper you hear and a tool that can defy gravity.